What's up, everyone? It's your favorite marketer and podcast host. My name is Prit. I'm the author of Zero to Four Figures, a marketing strategy consultant, and a digital entrepreneur. A few of the roles that I do take on: I'm a podcaster, YouTuber, Etsy shop owner, and a Skillshare teacher. All of the links are in the description box below if you would like to check it out. On this podcast, I shuffle between giving solo podcast episodes and bringing in experts to give you actionable steps on various marketing, business, and mindset strategies to help you grow the business you love. Today, I have one such expert with me, Gregory Offner. Gregory Offner is one of the most in-demand experts on the topic of professional performance and navigating disruption. His clients include Fortune 100 companies, and he is often asked to keynote at conferences where industry leaders and executives turn to him for new perspectives on how to elevate performance, eliminate disengagement, and make work suck less. And I think that's actually going to be our entire topic for today. How do you make work fulfilling? Gregory, let me invite you to the Marketing Nomad Show. How are we doing today?
I am fantastic. Thank you for having me here.
Greg, so I've actually read your story. So I want my audience to feel inspired by your story. So tell us, how did you get started with your entrepreneurial journey? Where did you come from, and how has your journey been so far?
Yeah, it was an interesting road because I started speaking as a profession because I nearly lost the ability to speak in life, just in general. In 2015, I was working at a piano bar and opened my mouth to sing the first song of the night, and nothing came out. So that terrified me. And after several visits to specialists, doctors who specialize in vocal cords, they said, we don't understand how you've been speaking and singing professionally because your vocal cords are so badly damaged that if you do nothing within the span of 2 weeks to 2 months, they'll become permanently paralyzed and you'll never speak again. We don't think you're ever going to be able to sing again, but we feel pretty confident that if you take action now, undergo vocal cord surgery, we'll be able to get some form of a speaking voice back for you. So what they suggested was this surgery that would require me to be silent for several weeks, and I wouldn't be able to re-enter the normal world of speaking for 6 to 8 months. And I thought, well, that's just too much. I can't do that. I can't go without the paycheck that comes from what I do during the day and the fun and also the paycheck that comes from all of the piano bar work that I do. So I negotiated. I said, well, could we do a smaller, maybe a little light version of the surgery, let's say? Would that be feasible? They said, well, we're willing to try. We don't recommend it, but we're willing to try. And because of that decision, I wound up needing 15 surgeries over the next several years. I spent the better part of a decade in and out of the operating room, spent thousands of hours in vocal therapy. I work with a team of vocal specialists even today to make sure that I maintain my voice. But after all those surgeries, I had to make a decision. I couldn't go back to the piano bar. That life was done for me. It was way too much strain and stress on my voice. And I realized in my periods of silence and healing that I didn't love what I was doing during the day. I mean, my job, it paid well, but it sucked. I mean, if we're being honest, I felt it sucked. Unique perspective of having worked in the corporate world and working in piano bars for so long that I could see where my audience engaged and where I lost them over the course of a night. And I saw where my clients and even the folks who I trained and developed as salespeople, where they engaged and where I lost them. And I spent a lot of time focusing on where was the overlap in that experience. What could we take from the world of piano bars, from that experience, and bring into the world of, sort of suit and tie wearing professionals, buttoned up and walking to work with our briefcase? And how can we create the type of environment at work that people want to experience again and again and again? And that's led to what I do now, which is speaking at conferences and for organizations all over the world, introducing them to what I call the tip jar culture, how they can create it within their own organization, what will happen when they do. And ultimately, like you said at the beginning of the show, the goal of this is to take the irk out of work, to make work suck less.
So from your journey, I see that there was just so much of adversity. And Greg, how did you, I'm sure there were a lot of mindset shifts that had to happen along the way, you know, when you were navigating through those processes, those procedures on you? How did you navigate through those mindset shifts? How did you emerge successful today?
Ultimately, a lot of luck. I had a lot of great people in my corner that were mentors, advocates, sounding boards, that were willing to text with me instead of get on the phone, because through many periods of time, I couldn't speak. So the only way I could talk about what I was feeling and the stresses and the frustrations was through text message, or if you were over my house and we were hanging out, through writing things down on a whiteboard or writing things down on a piece of paper. It was very frustrating, both for me and for my friends, because it's a less optimized way to communicate. So I think the main thing that I have to acknowledge is that I had a great base of friends and a support system. But I'd also put in a lot of work on myself during this period of time, and looking for the good in each scenario instead of pointing out what's very obviously wrong, which I think we're all pretty good at. I mean, human beings are trained fault finders. I started to train my brain to ask a question: what could be good about this? Which I call a solution-focused mindset. Most of us ask problem-focused questions like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get this right? Well, the solution-focused question would be, okay, what is this going to lead to? What can solving this problem lead to? What can I do differently to solve this problem? It's a can instead of can't focused mindset. Yeah. So I put the health of my voice in the hands of trained professionals. And I had to believe that what they were doing was not, number one, the best they could do, but number two, the best thing for me to be done. And then I said, well, what can I do? How can I contribute to this healing experience? Well, what could I control? I could control when I spoke, where I spoke, how I spoke, and back to the mindset, how I thought about what my voice was doing in healing. And I was very optimistic from the onset that if I followed what these experts were saying, and if I did my part, that things would get better. And there are some folks who have the opposite side of it. Oh, this is never going to work. I'm never going to get better. And I do believe that there's a bit of speaking things into existence, negative and positive, that if you truly believe that things won't get better, then they probably won't. You have a very poor shot of things actually getting better. But if you do believe they'll get better, I got to think that there's some influence there. There was a philosopher mathematician named Blaise Pascal, and he was asked, could he mathematically prove the existence of God? And he thought about it for a while. And what he came back with is this was called Pascal's wager. And what he came back with was this quadrant. And it was basically 4 possible scenarios. And he said, either I believe in God and God exists, or I believe in God and God doesn't exist. Now, if I believe in God and God exists, then I'll probably go to heaven, or, whatever you believe God does for people that believe in God. If I believe in God and God doesn't exist, well, then maybe I lived by some rules or some practices that I otherwise would have not done, but generally I probably lived a good life. So those are 2 options. The other 2 options: I don't believe in God and God exists. Well, you're probably in for a rough afterlife, or whatever we believe comes next. Yeah. So that's 1. 2 is I don't believe in God and God doesn't exist. Well, then who cares? No harm, no foul, right? What he realized was, of those 4 quadrants, the mathematically sound, the smart choice was to believe in God, because either way, you kind of win. So whether it's true or not that my belief, my positive outlook impacted my surgery, my recovery in a positive way, I kind of feel like I picked the mathematically the best choice, because if I believe that my mindset has an influence in how I'm going to do, well, great. And so that's what I would, encourage folks who are starting out a business or who are stuck in any situation in their life right now to do, is to just think, what would Pascal have done? You have better odds of believing in a positive outcome. That doesn't mean, like some folks would say, like, Jesus, take the wheel. Like, you can't put it all on faith. You've got to act. But believing in yourself and believing in the positive outcome, it certainly can't hurt you.
I think you've talked about so many good points here, Greg. And I think the first thing that I do want to talk about is you telling that there were experts who were helping you out, and you were able to trust that they could do their job while you just focused on the things that you could control. And I think That's a very valuable lesson. I think sometimes when everything around us is out of control or it's not going according to our plan, I think we have the tendency to panic and just try to control all the things that we can't control or it's completely beyond our control. So I really liked that you said you only focused on what you could control and just left the rest to either the experts or just external factors. And I really liked that. The second thing that I really liked was that you talked about solution solving question. You know, did I say it correctly?
Yeah, solutions focused.
Solutions focused. And I've read this article where psychologists say that when we are, when we are kids, the first thing that we are trained to do is answer questions. What is your name? What is your age? Who is mom? Who is dad? And because we are trained to answer questions from a very young age, the questions that you ask yourself throughout your life will always be subconsciously answered by you. So if you ask questions like, what is the problem with me, or why do these things happen to me, then your brain will automatically answer those questions. So it starts listing all those things that are wrong with you. But I really like that you said, okay, what is the solution to this problem? And I think that your brain automatically goes in search of those answers. And I liked that switch in mindset. And the third thing that you talked about was faith. I think that is beautiful. I think it's important to have faith in the process, whether or not it does happen or does not happen. I really like the fact that you talked about having faith in yourself and, of course, external factors changing. And so, Greg, you started out with one career. Midway, you realized it was not for you, and then you switched. What were your thoughts during that time? How did you first realize that this wasn't for you? How did you come to the conclusion that you wanted to actually pursue a career that you were passionate about?
That's a big question and I want to answer it, but you brought up this idea of questions and that we are at a young age conditioned for questions. The most powerful question that I asked myself when I was making this transition from the one job and from this one lifestyle into what I do now was, what would a top performing speaker do right now? So, what would a very successful speaker be doing right now? If I were pausing in my day and felt lost, if I felt overwhelmed, I don't even know that I knew the actual answer. But my brain had to concoct, all right, well, what do you think a top performing speaker would do right now? Well, try that. And I think that the audience can take away that idea and apply it to whatever industry they're in. So if you're a computer programmer, what would an in-demand computer programmer be doing right now? Well, go do that. But we almost act our way into whatever outcome we want. So the question you asked was, how did I know that I was in the wrong role? And how did I go about making the shift? Well, I think the shift happened because of my vocal cord injury. The power of, let's call it the velocity of life, but maybe the power of routine is so strong in all of our lives that for many people, it's going to take a traumatic incident to make a major shift. And I do think that for me, I would still be chugging along moderately satisfied, but more or less unhappy with my life were it not for my vocal cord injury. So while it was awful, I wouldn't wish that anyone had to go through what those several years of my life were like. It was also kind of the best thing for me. It was sort of what the signal the universe needed to send me to say, dude, nothing's going to change if nothing changes. It's time for something to change. So that was the how I made the shift. The first part of your question, though, is a little harder to answer because it's different for everyone. For me, I started out really interested in the work I was doing. When I got out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I had studied psychology, philosophy, and music. That is not the recommended career path for like any job, maybe other than what I do now. But so I graduated and thought, I've got all this debt. It's not like I specialized in accounting. And so I'm going to go work for one of the big four accounting firms. I had abundance of choice. And at that point in my life, that was a problem because I needed direction. And someone pointed me in the direction of a career in sales. And initially, it ticked a lot of boxes for me. It exposed me to business, so it gave me something to do. It paid really well. I was good at it. I was outgoing. I was tenacious. I had this competitive spirit about me. I was great with people. I was really quick in terms of my ability to pivot conversationally and pick up what somebody else was putting down and act on that. So I did really well. But it became, to me, it became a bit like Groundhog's Day. And I would look in the mirror some mornings and go, is this it? Is this what my life is going to be over and over again? A new month, a new quarter, a new year, starting at zero, got to hit the quota. It felt mind-numbingly frustrating, like I was running in place and consistently being asked to run faster, but never really getting anywhere. And I got to take shoulder some responsibility for that. I hadn't done the work on myself. I expected the world to change, but I wasn't willing to change. So it might have been that it was a bad fit for me then. But the simple fact is it was a bad fit. So I got to a point where I had climbed high enough up the ladder that I was able to sort of hide in the world of sales and do just enough not to get noticed. And I was kind of always in like the general top 25% of my company. In some cases I was in the top 10%, but I did well enough not to get, not going to say the word I want to say, not to get messed with by people at the company. Yeah. Like Offner's doing good enough. Like leave him alone. It'd be great if he did better, but he's certainly, not somebody we got to worry about. But with the emergence of my vocal issues and realizing that I was going to get the ability to speak back, and if I was given that blessing, did I really want to go back and waste it? And the answer I came to was no. Even if it meant not doing as well financially, even if it meant falling flat on my face, going bankrupt, selling the house and having to start all over, I was going to try. And I think that's the greatest failure. I believe, I'm projecting maybe now, but I believe it's the greatest source of frustration, unhappiness, and disappointment in the world is that there are a lot of people, we walk by them on the sidewalk, we pass by them on the highway, they're not even trying. They're playing not to lose what little they have. And in doing so, they never get the opportunity to see how much they could create if they just tried.
I definitely resonate with every single thing you say. I mean, I have said this so many times on my podcast, on my, on my all my channels, and especially in my book as well. One, I think it's only through adversities and shakeups like this. I mean, my life story is pretty much, I didn't go through what you did, but it was a pretty bad place that I would not even wish on even my worst enemies. So I kind of came back from the depths of hell, that kind of, I would say. But for me, just like you, I would have continued a path that I was just okay with, but I needed that shakeup, and I am so grateful for it, regardless of how painful it was. So for me, it really resonates listening to your story, because I can see the timeline just going there. And I think what you're doing today is amazing. I think it is aligned with who you are as a person, and I'm really happy that the journey took there for you. And then the second thing is passion. I think that so many people do not allow themselves to experience passion in their lives, to find something that really lights their soul on fire and pursue it in some shape or form, not necessarily as a full-time career, but even just give themselves that moment of joy. And I think that also comes directly into what we're talking right now, and that is fulfillment in the work that you do. What do you think fulfillment by the work one does actually means?
You mentioned passion, and I've been a believer for a while now that you don't have to be passionate about what you do, but you do have to be passionate. I think without passion, we Adam Grant used this term earlier this year, we languish. We sort of die in place inside. And what's been a saying is that you don't have to love your 9 to 5. But if you don't, you damn well better love your 5 to 9. Whatever you do from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., it better be something that, to use your word, that lights your soul on fire. Because this is it, friends. Like, this is all we get. This is all we get. And none of us started with enough to live our life playing on defense. I know folks who are very wealthy, more wealth than I may ever have in my bank account. And they are financially wealthy. And they are spiritually broke. They are just miserable because they're continuing to play not to lose. They're living their life not to lose. And what it takes for them to be awed, to be inspired, to be amazed is on such another level. I mean, I can walk outside and sometimes a breeze can inspire me. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful experience. They need a $50,000 dinner on a $50 million yacht in the middle of some sea that you and I have never even heard of before they can even scratch the surface of being amazed. So I feel like I've digressed a bit from the point, but what I'm trying to share with the audience is that having passion about what you're doing makes you better at it. And you don't have to have passion about your job. I get it. Not everyone is in the position where they can afford to stop what they're doing and chase what they love. We all live in different circumstances and have different responsibilities. But I also do believe that too many of us give ourselves, I don't want to say a free pass, but we sort of write off the possibility that we could pursue something that we love during the day. I had a conversation with someone yesterday who was telling me how much she was unimpressed with her current situation, but also unable to move from it because the reality in the United States anyway is most people's health care is tied to a full-time job. I think that might be one of the biggest sources of dissatisfaction and unhappiness in the United States is that you have to work for some company for 40 hours a week to have, even marginally good insurance, I think, at this point. So maybe we'll get our act together and decouple insurance and healthcare from employment. And I think we'll see happiness rise overall just because of that. But the point again, which I keep seeming to deviate from, is that I don't believe you have to have passion for what you're doing. I wish more people did. I think the world would be happier. The people that we walk by on the sidewalk or we drive by on the highway, I think they'd be in a better mood if they enjoyed what they were doing for their workday. But if you're that type of person, and I've been there, where you've just got to do what you got to do because of the circumstances of your life, I beg you to find something you are passionate about outside of that 9 to 5 and pursue it relentlessly. Because without that, you're just throwing away this opportunity that you've been given. I often ask people in the audience when I'm doing a program to pull up a picture of their child. If they don't have a child, pull up a picture of a child that they care about. If you don't have a child that you care about, I know you love dogs or cats because that's the way we are. Yeah, if you don't like kids, you like dogs or cats or birds or snakes or something. Is the purpose of that life to just suck it up and suffer? Or is the purpose of that life, that face, if it's a child that you're staring at, is it to flourish? One day somebody was staring at a picture and it was your face when you were a child. Nobody wanted you to grow up and suffer and just suck it up. They wanted you to flourish. And so if you can't do it for the person you see in the mirror, do it for the person who one day long ago was looking at that picture of you as a child, who wanted you to flourish. That's what I think the purpose is. And whether you find that through your work, through your kids, wherever you find it, I just encourage you to go chase it and watch how your life changes as a result.
I 100% agree with this. This is really, really passionate, Greg, and I absolutely hung on to every single word of it because I truly believe that even if it is not, pursuing a full-time career, as you said, even if it's just Bollywood dancing at 10 p.m. in the night for 30 minutes every single day. Find something that you're passionate about and just allow it to consume you. And that's what I believe. And I really think that you summarized the entire point so well. I believe that everybody should be fulfilled by what they do. And can you tell us some of the signs that we are not fulfilled by what we do, and we should probably think about making a switch?
Yeah, but just first I have to ask, did you just sort of out yourself? Is that your thing? 10 p.m. Bollywood dancing, 30 minutes?
Yes. I'm very vocal about it. It's one of the things about me. And I mean, I'm crazy about Bollywood dancing, and everybody knows this. I actually use it as a method to educate people on my Instagram as well. So yeah, 10 p.m. Bollywood dancing, guys, that's what you will see me do.
I love it. So if you're looking at your watch and you're like, it's 10 p.m., what's happening in the world? You know, the Prince
Oh yeah,
Bollywood
Prince
dancing.
dancing
That's
somewhere.
awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's a magic formula to tell if we are unhappy. And I think if we are honest and we look in the mirror, you know, I think, you know, if you just stare deep into your own eyes, I think, you know. But for me, in retrospect, I played a little fast and loose with drinking. And that was a coping mechanism for me when I was unhappy. You know, it never bled into my work day or was, you know, as severe as I know some people have to navigate that type of challenge. But I certainly wasn't using it in a healthy way. And that's a coping strategy. And I think a lot of us have coping strategies. Some of them are healthy, like Bollywood dancing. You know, it's not just a hobby, that can also be an outlet. For me, it's going to the gym. That is a very important outlet for my life. It's where I get all my physical feelings out. So if you don't have that type of outlet, that might be a sign that you're unhappy. If you don't have something that's bringing you joy, that might be a sign that it's time to move, to shake things up. So I wish I had a crystal ball answer to give everybody to help make the world better with that question, Prit. But I think the best thing I could say to the audience is go take a second, more than a second, and just look deep into your eyes in the mirror. You know.
I think you're right, Greg, because even if I have to look back at all those times where I was not fulfilled by what I was doing, I think the mistake that I made was not taking the time to understand. Because when you're in that cycle of just working, taking the time to think if you are even happy or not, or fulfilled or not, is such a challenge. Because one, you don't want to ask yourself, you're scared of the answer, because that would mean you have to take some action, you have to get out of that situation. So I think most of the times we're so scared to ask ourselves that question. So I think you absolutely nailed it. Take some time to ask yourself, to completely analyze what you're feeling when you're working. And if something feels off, most likely it is, you know, and most likely it means you have to take a change, or you have to make a change. And for those of them, you know, who have taken a second to ask themselves and they want to make the change, how do you think they should get the courage to make that decision? What thought processes should they have? What should factor into their decision making process?
That's a big question. How do you get the courage?
I seem to be asking a lot of big questions for this interview.
Well,
Greg, I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's not putting me on the spot. I just want to deliver an answer that adds value for the listener, because I think that for me, I went through a visualization exercise. Someone walked me through a visualization exercise of what the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years of my life would look like if I didn't change anything. I didn't like what I saw. That for me, and I'm really simplifying what was a huge experience in my life, actually, but that for me was very powerful. I think what I can offer your listeners that will help them along the way is a clarification process when they do decide what they want. Because the other thing I noticed, not just that I was living my life on defense, you know, living to avoid losing versus pursue what I wanted. Gosh, I really wasn't clear on what I wanted. I mean, it sounded clear to others. Maybe that's because I have a way with words, but I really wasn't clear. And here's an example. When I get to speak with youth groups or kids, I often ask, who wants to be a millionaire? and just see how many hands shoot up. And as you might imagine, Britt, lots of hands go up, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with money or being a millionaire. Money makes things easier, and being a millionaire, that can be a fine goal. But when we think about how much sacrifice and struggle and hard work and dedication is required to be a millionaire, some people give up. Some people just decide, well, that's not really for me. And so I wondered if being a millionaire was really what all these kids wanted. And so I asked them, I said, when you're a millionaire, what will that allow you to do? And you get lots of different answers. And what I've noticed is they all revolve, they sort of circle around this idea of freedom, autonomy. I'll have freedom. So which tells me that what they really want isn't to be a millionaire. They want what being a millionaire would allow them to do. So here's the takeaway for the audience. Whatever your goal might be, let's say it's to get promoted, right? I want to be a sales manager. It's a fine goal. What will being a sales manager allow you to do? So I've used this word, this phrase, so that I can. I want to be a sales manager so that I can blank. Fill in the blank. And you got to be really brutally honest with yourself. Might be, I want to be a sales manager so I can prove to my mom and dad that I can get a managerial role. Okay, that's honest. But now on the next line, I want to prove to my mom and dad that I can get a managerial role so that I can blank. We got to fill that line out too. It's going to take some brutal honesty there. This process is simple, but it's not easy. And it may take a little while. And what you'll find is you'll refine this goal over and over and over again until you get to something that's pretty damn simple. That's what we should work towards. And what's beautiful about this process is that while all those obstacles may arise towards the initial goal that we've stated, like being a sales manager or being a millionaire, and some of those obstacles may cause us to give up. When we get to that refined goal, what I call a root goal, no obstacle is going to stand in our way, because that's what we truly want. And it might be that to get what I really want, I don't have to be a sales manager. It might be as simple as a conversation with mom and dad saying, hey, I love you, and I just need to know that you respect me and what I've done. I mean, whatever your goal is, there are probably several paths to it. What I want to help you find is the most compelling and ideally the simplest. Let's not complicate life. I mean, it's complicated enough, I think, in many areas. So that process, I call it root goal analysis. When you've decided you want to make a change, and when you muster courage from wherever it is you gather courage from, that process can then be used to help you achieve clarity. Clarity and simplicity are going to make it easier for you to achieve your goals.
I'm absolutely mind blown, because just the fact that it's 3 words, but of course it's a process that keeps repeating. I think that's mind blowing, because so many times, even I've seen that, most of the times when you ask people, well, how many of you want to be entrepreneurs? And then everybody seems to raise their hand because that's the latest fashion trend over there. But when you genuinely try to get to know what they aspire to be, no, they just want 6 figures. And not just 6 figures, there's a lot deeper. They just want to be part of the group that gets acknowledged. They want the fame. There's so many hidden things that goes, whereas the entrepreneurial journey, it's fundamentally about making a difference to the society. So they just want a cushy corporate job. And I think just understanding what is it that you truly want by asking yourself, or by kind of going over so that I can, I think it's mind-blowing, because even when I break down what I want, and I just did it mentally as I was speaking to you, it's very simple. And like you said, there are many ways for me to get there. And I think it's on us to choose the simplest route to get there, rather than the route that everyone seems to be talking about, or just be a part of a group that seems to highlight a particular path. So I really like that, Greg. I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
it's
and
mind-blowingly simple.
And as you say, making, the entrepreneur and making a difference to society, I think, well, if you really want to make a difference, go and pick up trash at the bus stop. That That can make a
Absolutely.
difference. It doesn't, you
Absolutely.
don't have to found the next Uber to make a difference in society. Like, we overcomplicate what that
Yes.
means. Now,
Yes.
if you say, well, Greg, I really don't want to pick up trash. Okay, then it's probably maybe making a difference to society isn't the actual thing you want to do. Maybe it's something else, and that's okay. All I'm saying is let's identify that so we can pursue it and not
Yes.
waste time pursuing things we
Absolutely.
don't actually want.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I've had such a fantastic conversation with you today, Greg. I think we've touched on so many different aspects. And if there was one advice that you could give my audience, what would it be? And of course, me, what would it be?
If I have to sum it all up, it would be, remember that someday you're going to do something for the last time. We don't know when that day is, and we don't know what that thing is. What I do know is that you can use something you heard today in our conversation to get you closer to what you really want. So on that day, when you do that thing for the last time, you look back and go, man, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at today. That's what I want for your audience. I want them to walk away better than when they started this journey.
I feel so inspired. Like, honestly, I'm just, that itself, it was like a light bulb click for me, because it's true. I think we take the things that we do and take the things that we have for granted, that we don't realize that someday, yes, it's going to be the last time. It's going to be the last time that I probably shoot a YouTube video, or maybe I want to go move on to another venture. So I think it's important for us to take the time to appreciate and fully give it our all. Thank you, Greg, for coming on my podcast. If my listeners want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'd love them. I spend a lot of time on Instagram and Twitter now these days. So hey, connect with me there. I'm at Gregory Offner Jr. for junior. So Gregory Offner Jr. My website is gregoryoffner.com. So if you want to learn more about the work I do at conferences and with organizations, go check that out. And, just act on something. Again, I think the biggest challenge with all this information that we create out in the world is there's this massive doing gap. Like, we know a lot of stuff. If you listen to this podcast, you know a lot of stuff because you're getting great content. What are you going to go do? Just take one thing that we talked about today and go do it, and your life will get better because of it.
I, for one, am going to do so that I can experiment today. I'm definitely going to do that. And for those of you listening out there, reach out to Greg. He's pretty friendly, pretty nice. Tell him one thing that you liked about this podcast episode. And of course, definitely I think he's talked about at least 3 exercises to do in this podcast episode. Try one, reach out to him, let him know your thoughts on it. Greg, thank you so much for having, no, wait. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to have you on my podcast episode. And for those of you listening out there, thank you so much for listening all the way up until here. I will catch you in my next podcast episode. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Prit.